More on the changing of the guard, both on Capitol Hill and in the White House. We're going to cross to Montreal and speak with Professor Pierre Martin from the University of Montreal, who is also a contributor to the newspaper Le Journal de Montréal. Thanks very much, Pierre, for joining us here. It's difficult to determine what President-elect Trump is going to do day to day. Perhaps this is a bit unfair question, but what's the outlook for his first 100 days? What should we be looking for?
Well, good evening. Mr. Trump has made himself, his trademark is to be unpredictable. And so one would be foolish to try and pin down exactly what he'll do in his first 100 days. But perhaps the most important thing that he'll have to do in the first few days is to realize that being the president of the US is not the same thing as being the chairman of a private corporation. There's a lot of compromises to be done. There's a lot of cajoling and politicking. And for example, if he wants to get all his cabinet confirmed, he's going to have to make concessions right and left to both to his own party and to the opposite party. So he will first need to learn on the job, but there are things that he will be able to do more easily than others, and some promises will be easier to keep and implement than others, of course.
What do you make of the very first effort of this Congress President-elect Trump takes on? He has been using Twitter as his bully pulpit for more than a year and a half. What do you make of all this? And clearly he has had a tough road to hoe with the Speaker, Paul Ryan, as well.
Yes, well, the Congress, the new majority in Congress now feels empowered. They feel like they have wind in their sail, and they feel like they can actually run the place. They can, and the first initiative that they had and they had to backtrack on this notion of reducing the scope of the ethics office in the Congress is something that actually was politically very difficult to support and very difficult to defend. And the president-elect has been wise in advising them to put some water in their wine and make sure that they can actually come into the new year both in a position of numerical strength, but also of political strength, not expending too much capital right from the start.
From an international standpoint, tell me about all the China bashing. How has that played out? Indeed, putting tariffs on items coming into the United States as well, just the way he has basically talked about China and its leadership.
Well, this is politically very expedient, and in the context of a political campaign, it's something that has been very rewarding for Donald Trump. But in terms of policy, in terms of long-term economic policy, this has problems as well, because what he'll need to do is both to implement his economic reforms domestically, which will tend to be economically stimulating and therefore increase potentially the value of the US dollars, and at the same time try to mitigate those potential trade conflicts outside, which hold the potential in the long run, if they lead to what we call trade wars and exchange of high tariffs, they can lead to higher prices, and this in the long run is much more difficult to sustain politically.
And again, the business climate. What is the outlook? So much talk about protectionism. It has been his mantra, going to Twitter to challenge and chastise any company, U.S. or international, that dare cross him. Is this healthy?
Well, that's his way of doing business. But in the long run, what truly matters is the big picture. And it's easy to make headlines day after day with small increments and notions like saving 700 jobs here, protecting or threatening one company who possibly might open plants outside of the country. But the big picture is much more important, and his ability to sustain the kind of job creation that has been going on in the last 6 years is the main challenge, and to do so also without inflation and without too much inflationary pressure is also a big challenge in terms of an economy that has reached a very low unemployment point with 4.6%, and where there's a lot of potential for inflation.
Do you think that the U.S. is in danger of this isolationism if they continue to move forward like this? And what about immigration? I mean, if all the people in the United States who said they were going to move to Canada if Trump won did, your country would be a lot more populated right now. But how is it playing out up in Canada?
Well, on a day like today, they would probably find it very difficult. But we're not seeing them coming in by droves. But in the long run, of course, the U.S. does need some level of immigration, although the U.S. does have a fairly healthy birth rate. But it cannot sustain its rate of growth without immigration. It cannot sustain its current economic stature without the contribution of people who may not be entirely legally, whose status is unclear. And so, again, Mr. Trump has made much political gain by emphasizing a very tough stance on immigration, but in terms of policy, in terms of the actual working of government day by day, he again will have to put water in his wine. He will have to realize that he can't do everything that he promised, and in the long run, that might be a problem in terms of sustaining the coalition that he was able to build.
Okay, Pierre, would love to check back with you in a few months and see how things play out. Pierre Martin, thank you very much for joining us this evening from Montreal.